Yeah, we came too far in the darkest days. Don't know where we are or who we are. Yeah, we came too far in the darkest days. Don't know where we are or who we are. Yeah, we came too far in the darkest days. Don't know where we are or who we are. Yeah, we came too far in the darkest days.
Alright, what up, y'all? Planet of Fake for Families here in Pigstar HH News. You're looking at the twin daughters of Michele Boudreau Deegan, a psychotherapist, I believe, in Washington, who basically took her life and took her two daughters' lives, twin daughters, after giving them a sedative to make them sleep. She basically shot them in the sleep and killed herself based on going through a brutal custody battle with her baby father. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that believe that perhaps the custody battle pushed her to this, but you have to think about it. Would these children be safer with their father? I believe they would be. You know, just based on look at the extreme the mother went to. And it's not judging the mother, but it's like at the end of the day, once you become a threat to yourself or others, that's normally when the state steps in. And we shouldn't have to wait for violence for the state to step in, but there is no way to really protect children from their parents unless we see the signs. And there were some signs. All through October, she was posting on her page narcissistic parents, suicide, and things like that. I included them in the video. I also included a segment of the What the F show, and that's What the Freud, and they talk about basically dealing with narcissistic parents and the effect it have on children. I need y'all to send prayers out to Michelle's family as well as the baby father, because I know this is definitely hard to take, but it should never come to this. You should, as a parent, I believe, want to see your children grow up. Now, yes, it's hard for them to grow up without you, but they're a part of you. So even if you're not raising them 100% of the time, you should still be appreciative of their existence, you know? It's just really sad. Do you want to be remembered for that? Do you want their friends to remember them for that? And that's just the questions we have to ask when we feel like it's no other answers. But it should never come to this, especially not from a mother, you know what I mean? But it gets to a point where it's not about the children no more. It's about showing somebody they were wrong or proving that you're right a lot of the time. So send prayers out to this family, and upon getting more information, we'll keep you updated. With that being said, what you heard and saw was the content. For additional content, click the link in the description. Like, follow, share, subscribe, comment, hit the bell, visit my community wall, and if you have time, go to www.amore-eka.com/TV. That's our Planet of Fakes too. We are the new umbrella, Planet of...
Okay, I cannot give anymore. What? I cannot give anymore. Fuck, but my whole personality's built around kindness, and if I can't give, then I'm what? Stuck. So let's work this out. What's wrong with your heart? It won't come out, no, it won't even start. And then moving on, what's wrong with your brain? It yearns for the past, but it won't be the same. It's clear to see you've got a disease. What's the disease? Well, it's called empathy. It means you'll give blood till there's none left to bleed. But I do not want to be kind. What? I only want to survive. No, this effort's exhausting. It's getting me nowhere, and where does that leave me? Alone. You do not have a choice. The honey slips into your voice. Kindness flows through your veins. That is something that cannot be changed. Caring is what fulfills you. Learn to harness it before it kills you.
Planet of the Fakes for Families. And Pigstar HH News. Washington psychologist, 55, drugged her twin daughters, 7, with large amount of sedatives before shooting them dead and turning the gun on herself in planned attack spurred by custody battle. Michele Boudreau Deegan, 55, had given her daughters, Mary Annalise and Katie Elizabeth, a large amount of sedatives before killing them and herself. Police say she had also planned the killings over the course of several days prior. The scene unfolded on the afternoon of October 24th, when deputies responded to a call from someone who said he had found his landlord and her kids dead. An initial investigation revealed that Deegan had been embroiled in a custody dispute over the children with her estranged husband. The killings occurred just 4 days after a judge granted joint custody to Boudreau and her former partner, who has not been publicly named. ELFO added that investigators have ruled out any involvement from Ms. Boudreau's estranged husband in the incident. A Washington psychologist who shot dead her sleeping 7-year-old twin daughters before turning the gun on herself had planned the killing for several days and drugged her children before killing them, police say. Autopsy results confirmed that Michele Boudreau Deegan, 55, had given her daughters Mary Annalise and Katie Elizabeth a large amount of sedatives before killing them and herself, the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office has revealed. The Sheriff's Office said while it continues to investigate the murder-suicide, it's taking the unusual step of releasing new details on the probe because the tragedy has deeply impacted our community. The scene unfolded on the afternoon of October 24th, when deputies responded to a call from someone at a multi-level residence in Sudden Valley who said he had found his landlord and her 2 children dead in an upstairs bedroom. Michele Boudreau Deegan shot her 7-year-old twin daughters before turning the gun on herself at the family's home in Sudden Valley, Washington, on October 24th, police say. Thank you very much. Go to www.amer-eka.org.
Do you think that maybe this time around we could have like a normal reaction to something that hurts us, please? Actually, no. I hate you and you are going to get passive suicidal ideation instead.
Planet of the Fakes 4 Families. And Pigstar HH News. Washington psychologist, 55, drugged her twin daughters, 7, with large amount of sedatives before shooting them dead and turning the gun on herself in planned attack spurred by custody battle. Facebook opinions. How ironic that she was a therapist but needed real therapy herself. Poor kids. Kayvon Katuzian. It's not ironic, it's typical. Many people go into this education and profession exactly because they suffer themselves and can relate with empathy. Kayvon Katuzian. So, your presumption being that because of her profession, that should have made her beyond the reach of psychological problems. She's not a superhuman because of her profession. Even medical doctors get sick. Nothing ironic about being human. In no way am I downplaying the tragedy, but you need not be so narrow-minded. I read that she wasn't actually a licensed therapist. Jersey Monroe. Victims of abuse make the best therapists, because they actually get it. What's her story? Why wait till age of 47 to have children? Then kills them. No, she wasn't anything special, Sir Godfrey. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just making a statement that's worth questioning, just as you are formulating your own personal opinion, and giving me a response. Not narrow-minded at all. Grinning face with smiling eyes, Sir Godfrey. Some therapists have their own therapists. MDs don't diagnose themselves. They entrust their health to other doctors. Same concept. Very sad situation. Psychotherapists are notorious for...
Live from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Judy here of Dr. Judy WTF. And tonight we're going to have a very sad, tragic, heavy show. So please hold your questions unless it's really important. We're going to dedicate a lot of the show to the mother who unfortunately lost her child to suicide, and let her speak and let her attorney speak so we can understand more about the show that we're doing tonight, which is effects of narcissistic parenting on a child and how it is a setup for suicide. So just to give you a little bit of a background here, Dr. Judy WTF stands for What the Freud, which is really a theme about how we repeat patterns in our lives when we are not emotionally healed. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about narcissistic parenting before we have our call-in mom, Anne, and we're going to talk about her daughter, Heather. And these are alias names because she wants to retain her anonymity. And her lawyer, Sarah, who is going to be calling in because we need some real legal reforms here so that people can live and have proper laws that support lives. So just a little bit about narcissistic parents, and then I'll introduce the mind map, which many of you are familiar with, and then hopefully we will get a call in from Anne and Sarah and talk about the tragic case of her daughter, Heather, who committed suicide. Narcissistic parents never really understand the breadth of their impact on kids. I'm quoting from Psychology Today. I wish I could read the printout here. I think it's Seth Meyers, PsyD, like to give credit where credit is due, wrote an article on narcissistic parents' psychological effects on their children. And he talks about how the dynamics are really different. We're presuming that parents have a normal system. This is not a normal system. This is definitely a system gone wrong. And he poses the question of why would a narcissistic parent have a child to begin with, given that they don't really want to pay attention to anybody else but themselves? For those of you who've been watching several of the episodes that are up on my YouTube, effects of narcissistic mothers on their children, effects of narcissistic fathers on their children, you will understand more that the narcissistic parent is a parent who uses their child for supply. And I'm hoping that is Anne?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry. I thought you were going to try to do a three-way call with Sarah.
Sure. I don't know how to do that. I think maybe my tech support can figure it out. I believe because...
Do you want me to try to set up a three-way call with you?
Let me ask tech support. Can you arrange that?
Yeah, we can do. If they call in, I'll add them to a group call.
So if they call in, he'll add to a group call. How's that?
Oh, okay, that'll work. And okay, we'll do that.
Okay, awesome. And so I don't know if you heard my introduction. I did introduce the tragic theme, and I can't even... Yes?
We did hear.
Okay.
Yes,
okay, and I so appreciate you being on air today because you're really an asset to those people who don't really understand. You know, we talk theory, we talk mind map, which I will bring in eventually. We don't really understand until something as tragic as what you've gone through happens, and then it's a huge wake-up call. So thank you so much for sharing this with the audience, because we all need a wake-up call, and we have to understand the impact we have as parents, as a humanity, on our children.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for helping get the message out there.
Of course.
And helping. I sent an email just in case you need our two phone numbers.
I have,
also.
and tech support has. Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
So this happened last year, I know. And how are you? How are you doing?
I'm breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you sent me some information regarding some of the observations you had, and I'll read some of them, and then you can comment or elaborate. And I'm going to, again, limit callers because I think that you deserve the platform of communicating a lot of very important information to the audience. So here are some of the things. Yes, go ahead.
I have a technical question. Sarah and I are watching the internet version, and I don't know if that is a hindrance technically with the dialogue with us, between the three of us.
Okay.
Do you suggest I don't know because of the lag time.
Okay, so what do you think? Tech support, is it a hindrance or not?
I would have her turn her volume down or off on the internet.
Okay, turn your volume down or off on the internet, and then we'll be okay.
Oh, okay. So perhaps I'll put you on speakerphone so Sarah can hear you right
Awesome.
now.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. That helps a lot.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll just have you on speaker so we can follow.
Okay, and let me know when Sarah is on.
Okay. So this is Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. And I know that you've been watching the show. How ironic that that you two both have been watching this independently of knowing that both of you are watching the show and tuning into this information.
Yes, this is Sarah. I've been watching your show for about 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
And I am particularly interested in your shows about narcissistic parenting.
Yes. Well, that is what we're going to focus on, and I know that you have a lot of legal information to add to the show, so we will cover that because ultimately our children need protection. They need protection from parents, they need protection from other people, and they need protection from the law. So thank you for being involved in being a part of that service to humanity. So I just want to talk a little bit about outlining Heather's, your daughter's experience as the child of a narcissist. And here are some notes that I have, and I underline some very important aspects. Number one, her father never played an active role in her life. Father was controlling over many things. For example, he didn't allow her to watch certain programs like Sesame Street or have her face painted because he considered it poison. He also yelled at her and was very mean to her. He tried to sue mom for sole physical custody, which is an awful idea because children need both their parents, unless one is just so abusive that they're better off without them. A cousin recalls that father talked about how fat she was while feeding her candy. Boy, is that a contradiction. When she was, by the time, so I'm going to get into some somatic disorders because don't forget, these feelings in a child are not able to be properly metabolized. So they go into the mind, they go into the body. So by the time she was 6, she started getting tummy aches. So she started somatizing. She started having nightmares. And the father was opposed to therapy, so she had no outlet. She would also complain about her father, and she would also try to balance his negatives with positive attributes, but I'm thinking it never quite computed. At the age of 10, she talked of suicide. She said that she had emotional abuse and that was more painful than physical abuse. And that is a fact, that we don't see those internal wounds. They are the silent killers. And sometimes when I do work with my patients, I'll actually have them locate the pain in their body and relate it to words that they are told, messages that they ingrain into the fiber of their being. And it is physical pain that we experience when we are mentally tortured. And just a couple of other things that Heather became a vegetarian, and at some point she was forced to eat meat. So you could see the control, the psychological torture. That's the best word I can use. Within 2 years, she was dead. Okay, so Mom, again, I'm deeply sorry. This is beyond tragic, and I don't think that people realize, and I really want to overemphasize it, so if I'm repeating myself, it's because I want to. Your words, your actions, your impact on your children is really going to define their mental health. So for those of you who are not healed from your own childhood wounds, and remember, of course, that this is multi-generational, and when we're not healed from our own childhood wounds, we visit it upon our children. Anything that you want to add to what I was saying?
There were, I suppose, age-appropriate displays of anxiety, and it really, they really started to be exhibited from the time that the custody was changed. And in our particular case, the default where we live is an alternating week custody.
Okay. And how old was she when you two divorced? How old was she?
Well, that's another story. But from her perspective, from when the alternating week custody, which because her dad fought the divorce, so that didn't happen for a number of years. The custody was before that, and she was 4 years old at the time. And initially, she started wetting the bed, and it was associated with a change of custody. So that was the first sign, and then the tummy aches later, and then hair pulling that was associated with the homework, and again when she was what really tore my heart out at that initially that was a sound that I never forget, was how I would call during my non-custodial time as per the custody order, and I could hear her screaming in the background, "I want mama," and him yelling at her, "No, you don't." And that seemed to be the kind of the theme that went on. And I was hoping he would treat her better than he treated me, but I think in part it may have been because she and I were so close that I don't know, that it was just it was re-traumatizing. A lot of the same things that he would do to me, he would do to her, but I think it was that much worse for her.
Yes, and this is a situation where you felt that you had to get out, correct? And
it was because of her that I decided that I needed to set a better role model, and it was because she was a toddler and she asked me why he always yelled at me and was mean to me, and that's what made me realize that I guess, as you said, we have our own family baggage, and I could put up with stuff for myself, but I wanted to do right by her, so she's what motivated me to get out.
You know, I had a thought as you were saying that when parents separate or divorce, I think one thing that is not thought about, and Sarah, please feel free to jump in here, is that custody will usually be something like 50-50 or 70-30 or something like that, and there will be times in that child's life that they will be with the parent that is very, very unhealthy for them. So how does a parent make that judgment call? Because you're right. On the one hand, you wanted to be a great role model for your daughter and take her away from that and show her that it's not okay for women to put up with this. On the other hand, it physically meant that she was going to be in his presence alone a lot more. So if you can speak to that so that people out there can know what to do. This is what I call between a rock and a hard spot, don't you think?
Well, that's exactly right. The difficulty with separating from someone who is controlling is that your child is likely to be in that person's presence without your being able to mitigate the harm.
Right.
So that is a very, very difficult decision to make as a parent who is aware of the potential harms. But the hope is often that by providing one stable base of operations with the healthier parent, that having one good enough parent will help the child navigate those times when she's not with her.
So,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So, it is not always the case that's going to be the outcome. Unfortunately, when you've got a situation where one parent, the less healthy parent, is so severely dysfunctional. And, it's almost impossible for the court system to make the determination to keep the child from the parent who is alleged to be less functional until there's some harm to a child. So the system is not proactive. And that's part of the difficulty.
So, as we all know, if you see physical child abuse, you're seeing marks on the body, bruises, and so on. That is 100% reportable. If you're a teacher, if you're a therapist, if you're working with children, then you have a duty to report. What we're looking at here is mental scars. How does the court of law look at that? Because we know there are mental scars, and from a perspective of symptoms, as I say quite often in treatment, in my book, in my videos, any way I can get the word out, our symptoms are hieroglyphics or clues and cues that point to some cause. So they don't come out of thin air. She's not bedwetting because she's got a problem with bedwetting. It's the effect of the system gone wrong. It's the effect of the abusive system gone wrong. She's not just pulling out her hair because she has trichotillomania and we need to treat that in isolation. It's the cause behind that. So I'm even wondering if the court system employs psychologists, social workers, and so on to help with decision-making, lawmaking. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
I sure can. In our jurisdiction, while there are laws on the books, or there are provisions within our custody statute that require the court to make findings before awarding custody. Court has to make findings as to whether there are any mental health issues that could be detrimental to a child. The difficulty in making that assessment in our jurisdiction is that we don't have the resources. We don't have psychologists who are equipped to make that determination on staff for the court system. So if there are parties who have the funds to do so, a lawyer might hire a forensic, might hire a forensic evaluation, hire a psychologist to conduct a forensic evaluation.
Okay.
But that hardly ever happens. So the result is that you often have testimony put on as part of the custody trial, and the judge is left to make the determination as to whether, based upon the testimony in the record, he or she feels that there is an issue, a mental health issue that could be detrimental to a child.
That would be like putting me in charge of a trial and me being the judge, which I have no idea how to do it. So there's a problem there, right?
Worse.
Huh?
It might be a bit worse because you're a trained psychologist and you know what it looks like when a traumatized person tries to recall the events of her trauma. She might testify in a way that is halting. She might not be able to remember the events surrounding her trauma.
Correct. Complex PTSD. I'm just adding on to what you're saying. Complex PTSD. It interferes with memory. Yep.
Absolutely. And that's not something that is, I think, common knowledge amongst family court judges or attorneys. And we are trained as lawyers to pick apart the testimony. That's what we do. And we can talk a little bit about why people with that type of training, people who are trained lawyers, might not be the best first line of defense when we're talking about child custody issues. But, this is the system we have. It is probably, and there is no training that courts are required to give to judges or lawyers in what the symptoms of, what trauma looks like.
And the other part of it is I talk about the concept of the double dungeon of darkness, where the child feels that they can't really turn to anybody. They can't turn to the courts. They can't necessarily turn to one parent or another. They're lucky if they can turn to one of the parents because that's their light out, right? That's the exit out of the hell in part.
Well, when Kalina was 10, one time she came to me telling me that if she had to return to her father, she would kill herself. And we talked about that, and I tried to encourage her. I pleaded with her to go tell another adult because my hands were tied, basically. I had to try to explain this to a 10-year-old, how I was limited with what I could do. It was so unfair. It hurt so much. But she needed to tell other adults. And I learned after her death from her best friend when she was 10 that she told this other 10-year-old multiple times. She only opened up to me about it once, but her best friend heard multiple times and heard more than I did about some of the specifics. And this girl, Kalina's friend, kept it to herself for 4 years. It was only after Kalina's death, and I was the only person she had told. And then I spoke with this girl's mother about it. And again, people don't believe what's right in front of them. I had this woman, and this is why I'm so grateful that you're bringing this to light, because people have a hard time believing that anyone, let alone a parent, could do this to their child. I would tell the same mother of Kalina's friend about some of the things that Kalina had told me about. I had told her that Heather, that her father had previous families who chose to have nothing to do with him for reasons that he didn't understand, and she
to do with the father. You mean to do with the father?
To do with the father.
So there were signs that he wasn't healthy. There were signs.
Yeah.
So where is the child's voice, and where is the mother's voice in your case? And where was your voice when you're screaming my daughter said that if she has to go back to my ex-husband or ex-partner's house, she may commit suicide. So where does this fit in legally? Because again, we're not seeing bruises. It's not sexual abuse. And I just, for the audience sake, I want to go over the different types of abuse. There's sexual abuse. There is physical abuse. There is emotional abuse, which is what we're looking at mostly here, and then there is neglect and smothering. And the only ones that are, and please, I need more information on this, that seem to fall under the jurisdiction of the law is when someone is sexually molested, okay, that belongs in the court of law, or when they're physically abused or maybe severely neglected to the point where they're not eating or being clothed properly, etc. Where do the other forms of abuse fall? If you're smothering your child, unfortunately, I just went to I go to funerals of children who are smothered. They're smothered and spoiled. Does that fall under any jurisdiction, or verbal abuse? Mental abuse? Where does this fall legally?
So there is, as part of the custody statute where we live, there is a provision that speaks to emotional abuse.
Okay.
The court needs to make an assessment as to whether the parents are able to adequately meet the child's emotional needs.
Okay.
And there's a separate provision that speaks to whether a child is being emotionally or physically abused.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, for reasons that you spoke to earlier in our talk, because there are no bruises with emotional abuse, we're left with testimony.
Right.
And a child, it is error in our jurisdiction for a determination to be made about custody unless a child testifies, a child who is competent to testify.
And how many children will stand up there and say, see, here's the conundrum, okay? If a child stands up and says, if I have to go back to mommy's house or daddy's house, I may commit suicide. I can't stand it. And then they lose in court, then they have to go back to mommy's or daddy's house, and probably they're going to have to suffer even more at the hands of the parents who now feel betrayed, correct?
Correct.
So now what? Now what? Now this is getting more double dungeon of darkness.
It's even compounded by the fact that if you have a child who is so severely traumatized that they're already thinking about suicide, try putting that child on the stand. Try putting that child in the midst of an adversarial proceeding. It is too stressful.
Okay.
It is too stressful for a child to bear, particularly if they're already suffering some real severe repercussions from the situation already.
It's so sad because obviously our court system and mental health do not seem to play catch up. Both ends. And it's so important to cross-pollinate professions, especially in cases like this. Psychologists, mental health professionals need to know more about what's happening in the court system and how to interface, and vice versa. And wouldn't it be ideal if a child had a therapist right there on the stand with him or her to help at least mitigate some of the damages of this horrible process? But that doesn't happen, does it?
It does not.
Yeah.
It does not.
And one thing I just wanted to interject with Heather's particular history, that when things eventually it reached a point where it became physical, Heather developed an eating disorder after being force-fed meat when she outed herself about being a vegetarian. And again, I was trying to encourage her to stand up for her rights and it didn't go well. And the control became over something even more dangerous, and that was food. And Heather ran away from her father to my parents, and also via the school. Her school was incredibly supportive of her, and she did find a therapist she felt was helping her, but then her father had multiple lawyers call the practice that was trying to help her, and he threatened to sue the school, he threatened to sue this practice, and unfortunately where we live at her age, it required her father's consent because of the joint legal custody where we live. So he was able to say no and demand her private therapy records, and anyone whom Heather felt was helping her, he said no to. And just to really drive home how this joint legal custody is essentially, children have no voice. They have no rights. Essentially, the custody law is based in parental rights, and my understanding is that it and again, I don't know the legal, but it seems like property. The child is the parent's property. When Heather was dying in the hospital after she suicided, every single body part, in her case, it was the lack of oxygen to the brain that was the ultimate cause of death. But every single precious body part was perfect, and I know that Heather's last wish, and everyone who loved her would have loved her to have lived on by helping other children.
Yes.
She was such a generous spirited child, and I think due to her own suffering, she had an incredible social awareness, and she really inspired her friends to be socially active. And she was matched, every single body part was matched mostly to children younger than herself. And Heather's
What up, y'all? Planet of the Fakes, King of Content. Thank you for looking at my video. And also, I need y'all to basically follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is it ain't even POTF. It's just Planet_of_the Fakes. Planet_of_the Fakes. Subscribe to all my channels too. Mainly Planet of the Fakes, Umbrella Corp, POTFS, Planet of the Fakes Women Group, Planet of the Fakes 4KDZ, and make sure you like us on Facebook. Just put POTFS Global News. Thanks for watching our video, and definitely make sure you visit www.amordashika.com/TV, and that's basically where you see thousands of videos on our website, unflaggable, uncopyrightable. You could be there too. Just get your content together. King of Content, Queens of Content, Planet of the Fakes 2. We are a platform. With that being said, what you heard and saw was the content. For additional content, click the link in the description. Like, follow, share, subscribe, comment, hit the bell, visit my community wall, and if you have time, go to www.amordashika.com/TV. That's our Planet of the Fakes 2. We are the new umbrella, Planet of. And I wanted to bring some things to your attention. Oh, you know I'm going to follow that. You know I'm going to follow that. I'm going to follow that. Oh, I'm definitely going to follow that. I'm following that. I'm following that. Following that. Skip, 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 skip. Skip, 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 skip. Oh, I'm following that. 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 Oh, I'm following that. I'm following